So up next, we're going to do a brief yet informative Q&A with some of the filmmakers who are in attendance. So if you are a filmmaker that's here, please come down. Get ready for this Q&A. Give them a round of applause. Encourage them to come down here. They look hesitant. There's no escaping.
I'm Joel Salaysay, and my film is Last Night, which I wrote and directed.
I'm Jamie Taylor. I didn't make any of the films. I was an actor in Joel's film.
I'm Peter Faint. I directed, wrote, and acted in Darts. So.
I'm Becca Johanson. I directed Necromance. I also wrote it.
I'm Daelan Wood. I wrote and directed Hello Quinn.
My name is Jason Karman. I did Caravan Park.
Hi, I'm Sydney Southam, and I made ice cream.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. So I have some questions prepared, so I'll start with that, and then we'll open up to the audience. I think one of my first questions that I had is when I was going through the filmmaker biographies, I was really excited to see how many people were multidisciplinary artists. So I was wondering if a few of you could speak to that. We have Peter, who also studied English literature. Daelan, who, as you said, you do the music sessions, and Sydney, who is doing video, film, performance, painting, drawing, and all kinds of things. So I was just wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about how you think being multidisciplinary artist has helped or hindered your film career, what your experience has been. Maybe Sydney, would you like to start? Because you are quite multi-talented.
Ugh, it's very time-consuming. I also have a degree in English literature. Super useful. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of express myself in whatever medium makes sense for the idea. Sorry, what was the question?
Just kind of talking a little bit about that, like what it's like to be a multidisciplinary artist, and if you feel that it's made you stronger as a creative person.
Yeah, I think like I have a background in theater, in writing, and performance, and music, and like all sorts of things. So I feel like I can take from all sort of disciplines and bring that to my work. Isn't really necessarily reflected in the piece I showed today, however, but yeah.
Do you ever find it as a hindrance because people expect you to define yourself in one way, and it's maybe not easy to use like one word to be like, oh, I'm a filmmaker?
Well, I feel like most people do a lot of different things. It's just annoying talking to people like not from the art world maybe that are like, what, you don't sell paintings? I'm like, no, it's not what I do. So that's annoying.
Peter, how did you feel that your training in English literature helped you or didn't help you as an artist?
Yeah, I don't know. At first it was kind of tough taking the jump into filmmaking, I guess, but it's nice coming at it with like taking in poetry and reading and stuff like that. And yeah, pretty much, I mean, it's all the same when you're telling a story in the end, so yeah, that's pretty much all I got on that one. Can I ask you a question, Ice Cream, actually, briefly? That was the movie with all the people eating ice cream?
Yes, it was.
Where was that footage from? I was curious what was...
So that was family film footage shot by my grandfather. Pretty much everyone in that film was my family. So, and that was the first film I made. I wasn't a filmmaker before that. I had studied film studies at U of T, but I had never made a film. I was a visual artist. So, yeah.
Cool.
Did someone in your family work in the whaling industry?
That was... no, that was like a weird... Okay, so I had like 18 hours of footage that I had to edit from, and there was many kind of motifs that arose through the editing process, but there was also this like weird interlude of like some sort of family vacation where they went to a whaling... I don't know. It was very weird. It had like its own separate titles, and it was like... I think this like weird experimental, we're going to make like a film about the whaling place. And it was like in my family movies. So, yeah.
Since we're talking about your film, I'll skip ahead to some of my questions. So you talked about doing that film was like an exercise on how to deal with the suicide of your father when you were 7. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about because you said you were like working on themes of memory, and I was wondering if you'd had any changes on how you feel about memory, or like what memory means to you now versus like when you made the film.
Okay, can I like okay, so that in specifically in relation to that film, I was interested in the idea of post memory, so I wanted to see if I could express my personal experience using footage that I wasn't shot, I didn't shoot, and I wasn't there for. This is all shot before I was born, decades before I was born. So, and I was interested in that transmission of trauma down through the generations, and to me, it is a really personal piece, even though I didn't shoot any of the footage and I wasn't present for it. So I don't think that has changed for me at all. Like, I've made more films about this topic over the years, and I started combining archival footage with footage I shot myself, and then my most recent piece about it was just only had me in it and was only shot by me. But it all... Yeah, I mean, I think memory's pretty fluid, so my ideas about that haven't changed. But if you would like to know more, you can see my other films. They're really great. Thank you, whoever said that. Thank you.
I had some questions for this question is kind of to like Peter, Jason, and Daelan. I was wondering if you guys could speak a bit to the part that the location played in your story, and if the location was like premeditated, something that you really were like, oh, this has to be shot in this location, or if it was the location came after and influenced the film.
I can take that one. For me, the location was just my apartment, so it was easy. I wanted to be able to shoot something like my film starred my son, who was the main character, and I wanted it to be something that we could do in one evening that was kind of quick and easy, because he was 11 at the time, so you can't expect an 11-year-old to focus and show up at different locations and all that sort of stuff. So, so that was the thought behind that for mine, and also the feeling that I was trying to evoke was this sort of claustrophobic, like trapped sense of being trapped. So the idea of having it all take place in one small apartment kind of worked for that. So yeah.
Jason, especially because Jason, I noticed in yours they're in that Rona and they're like hanging out by storage lockers, and I just remember being struck by like those were interesting locations. I was wondering if they were premeditated or.
Yeah. So I love shooting up in North Vancouver, and that specific piece is the mobile home park that's right by Landscape Bridge on the north end. And what struck me about that was, my character is trapped in this place that was designed to not be permanent. So that mobile home parks are not designed to be permanent, but this one has been there for a while, and people have made it really beautiful. And then on top of that, there's the imagery of the bridge, the world going by, his world, and so he hangs out in Rona, for example, where it's supposed to be building dreams, storage lockers where dreams are stored, right? He doesn't have his own dream, so he's just tagging along these girls, and that's the tragic thing about his character, is that he's not able to move on. So that was all intentional. So.
Awesome. I'm just a follow-up question, just because we're talking about your film. I was really struck by the phrase where the character says, "You don't even know what real love is," and I wonder if what do you think that real love is? And is it something that you talked about with your actors beforehand? Did you have those kinds of conversations, or like?
Well, so that was my 13th short. I've done a lot of, and a lot of them deal with love and the perfect relationship, and what is the perfect relationship. So I've been in a relationship for 19 years, and it involves compromise, and sometimes it gets very heated. But it's always about compromise and dialogue, and making sure that your dreams, being selfless. That's one thing that I think is missing today in a lot of the youth. So the idea that everything has to be perfect, and if not, then you abandon that idea.
Awesome. Joel, did you have anything maybe to say about location in your film? Because like your film was a lot of long shots of locations, and if you could talk a little bit about like your process or why you made those decisions.
Yeah. I just felt like there were a lot of instances, or there are a lot of instances, where Vancouver doesn't really play itself. And so one of the things that I wanted to get at with this film was to not only tell a story that takes place in Vancouver, but is kind of a Vancouver story. Like the city itself actually plays a part in this character's mental state of mind, and just the constant downpour of rain and that sort of stuff. So yeah, Vancouver was an important element of this particular film.
Awesome. Does anyone in the audience have any questions that they might want to? I'll come to you, I guess, and give you this microphone.
For Joel, I mean, hey, how's it going? I'm just wondering the significance of the horses in your piece. I wasn't really able to make the connection myself.
It starts with strange dreams. To me, the idea of horses and the imagery of the slack around Jamie's legs tightening as the horses are running in opposite directions was the idea of sort of anxiety building and building to the point of needing a release. So that's what I was trying to get at.
And just really quickly, maybe Ryder can introduce himself since he just showed up.
Yeah. Apologies for my late arrival. Yes, my name is Ryder White. I made TC1, which is the second film in the first program, and I didn't see how anybody else introduced themselves, so I don't know how specific you want me to be.
That's okay. That's okay. Great. Question up here. You got a question?
For Joel, I loved your film. I was wondering, as far as the dialogue on the phone, I used to volunteer at the Crisis Center, and it was very familiar to me, some of that kind of the tone and the way the conversation went, and some of the things the lead said, like especially the counting towards the end. And I was wondering if that was something that you had some experience with.
Without delving too deeply, yes. I think, yeah, the idea with the counting, it's not necessarily rooted in any sort of textbook or anything like that, but the idea was to essentially, the situation was so delicate and so fragile that to prolong it and just keep it moving forward 10 seconds at a time was the only option that this character has in order to cling on until hopefully her friend can find her.
I love the dialogue. I thought it was very authentic and very strong. Thank you.
Just as a follow-up to that, just wondered, like, you guys are, this is for Jamie and Joel, you're doing a phone scene, and it was super intimate sounding. Like, I felt the connection there, and I felt like I was just like right up close. And there's a lot of super close-up shots as well, but just the conversation itself. What was it like trying to get that? Like, obviously, you're not shooting it talking to each other like an actual scene. So, can you comment on that?
Well, maybe I can let you talk about the rehearsal process a little bit.
So Joel rehearsed with Sarah and I. Sarah was the girl on screen who I was phoning. And Sarah and Joel and I, or Sarah and I are very, very close friends in real life. So Joel met with us and we had a bunch of rehearsals, but then we also, we talked about it separately from Joel a lot and found instances in our lives that we could relate to separately. And then obviously it was quite easy for us to make it real in some way because we would be the person that we would call in a situation like that. Perhaps it was accessible. And then with the shooting, Sarah shot for 2 nights and I fed lines to her, like fully. Joel directed us to be fully in, even though a lot of the dialogue that I was saying wasn't going to be able to be used, so that Sarah had something to play off of. I'm looking around instead of looking at you, Sean. And then we recorded it in post in a studio for me, and Sarah came to read her lines. So we were always playing with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, part of it is also the proximity is the sound mix. I had a great mixer, great sound designer to help me with that.
Okay, my question is for Daelan. In your film, the presence figure or whatever with the mask, the woman thing, was that somebody in your life? Like, was it representational of someone that is a sort of ominous presence, or where did the character come from?
No, it was sort of a process. So the woman who plays the creepy mask character is a friend of mine, Caroline Stokes. So I had this idea of something that seemed somewhat supernatural, but was a physical presence that you could see. So we talked about what would be the best way to visually represent that, and we had this idea for a mask, so we kind of spent time going back and forth, and she actually created the mask and molded it, but it didn't represent anything real. It was just I wanted sort of this ominous character that was clear that it wasn't, it was like it was like a human form, but there was something more to it. So that's sort of how that went.
Oh, I had a question way over there. I'm going to come over and you're going to ask your question. In the meantime, maybe I have a question for Becca about your film Necromance. I was wondering if there was a link for you in between Purgatory and Postal Workers, or like why, just like sort of you could talk a little bit behind that idea and how it came to you.
So it was entirely intentional. I was trying to think of, I guess like first the theme came of like focusing too much on things that are coming and not enjoying the present. And I like likened it to Purgatory, where you're waiting for the next best thing all the time. So you're always stuck, it feels like, in one place. And I thought, what career in, like, if we're set in Purgatory, what sort of career would, like, you could really enjoy it, but because you're doing the same thing every day, it feels really monotonous. And for me, that was just like, Postal Workers. And also the idea that, like, once she kind of like rediscovers her feelings, that a postal worker has the ability to like spread that throughout the community.
Interesting. Where was my question over here? Oh, up there. Okay.
So that was slightly convenient because I also wanted to ask a question for Necromance and Rebecca. So in your film, there was a moment where the male post worker did gain color and that electrical shock that I was taking as feelings or love. And I was curious why you guys decided to take it away, other than just the fact that you wanted to continue the film. Was there a significance behind it? Was it the postal worker was suddenly shy and insecure about the feelings of the other woman, or like?
Oh, when he gets shocked and then he loses it?
Yeah, exactly.
I like the idea of like he wasn't quite ready for it, I guess. So he had to come to it on his own by seeing that, she brought cupcakes to everybody to sort of spread good joy and sort of get everybody else feeling, have their feelings come back. and he kind of had to see that she had done that and that it had not gone well and feel bad about it in order to sort of like start to feel himself again. And like he picks up like the Valentines. Everybody starts like rediscovers love, and soon it's like everybody's in love, and it's like every day is Valentine's Day. And yeah, it was like he had to come to it on he had to go through like a longer journey than everybody else. They all have like their own timelines, so some of them it happens right away, and some of them it takes longer.
Nice. Awesome. Sydney, great film. Everybody, wicked
Thank you.
production value. I really liked all that. But this question's for Ryder. I'm curious as to like the sounds in your film. I know that some of the stuff or like I know what, for one instance you used like scrubbing of film in like the sounds of your film or for the audio. And did you do that here?
Yeah. Well, so actually, no. So all of, yeah. All of the sound in my film is collected samples from various radio stations as I traveled across the country. So I sat in the back seat of our car when I was on a road trip with my wife and mother-in-law, and had a radio plugged into my Zoom, and would kind of like scroll the tuning dial and try to find different things. And I am a big fan of the way that radio represents region specificity. By the nature of terrestrial broadcast, and they kind of have to be located in a specific place and play to a specific audience, when so much of our media nowadays is really decentralized and we kind of get things that come from all over the place. And so that was a good tie-in for me to the imagery, which was also specific to a certain place, but not in a particularly understandable way. And so, yeah, what I was trying to do with the sound in that was kind of evoke that feeling of kind of getting a glimpse into a community through the way it looks and through some of its media, but it's always obscured by how quickly you're moving and whether you're tuned into the right station at the right time. And yeah, so there's something I think that ties in, like what you said when you referenced some of my other films, which make use of the optical sound area on a 16mm film strip for creating sound. There's something in that, in static in radio, that I see as a little bit parallel between that and noise on film, in that there's all this sort of like randomness that that isolates us in a sound world, because it's not something that we recognize and can really make sense of. It's all sorts of things at once. I don't know. Does that answer your question, or sort of go on about it in a certain direction?
Is there any more questions in the audience? Oh, okay. One more. Oh, okay.
Speaker too, but this one's for Peter. Actually, it was an original question at the beginning that I don't think you got to answer. But in regards to location specificity, what made you decide on that location? Was it premeditated or just sort of panned out that way?
I was living in Victoria at the time, and pretty much I just wanted a park bench. So I was just going around to parks, and I ended up stumbling on that one, which was awesome. But there was no park bench, so I found a corner store that we could take their bench for the day, so we'd like lug it in. And we were kind of worried because we're smoking so many cigarettes that like there's a really big fine if you're caught smoking in parks now. So that was kind of worrisome a bit, but we were good, and we started shooting actually in the first because I was worried it's a public park, people were gonna come through, and like in the first hour there was like dogs running through and all this stuff for the opening shot. And my first movie I kind of like directed, and I was like stressful and blah blah blah. But then the next couple hours it was good, and it went pretty well. So I think there's lots of beautiful stuff in BC and stuff, and we just stumbled upon this great little park.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for being a part of this Q&A and for being a part of the festival, and for you as well, the audience. The party doesn't stop here, though. It's going to move on. There's an after party. So you're all invited to join us at the Tavern at the New Oxford, which is located at 1141 Hamilton Street. It's just a couple of blocks away, like a 5-minute walk. So if you want to join us at the after party and you're unsure of how to get there, you can just ask any volunteer and we'll give you some directions. And if you think of any more questions, hopefully some of the filmmakers will be at the after party and you can pick their brains then. So thank you so much, everyone. So round of applause for the filmmakers. Round of applause for yourselves. Applause for the organizers and for the sponsors. All right. Thank you.